I'm Mark Baer. You're watching the YourTown television program. My guest, Lucas Blok, artist, my great buddy. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. It's good to be here.
Okay, so you're here because this week, a new show.
I have a show in Pacific Grove for the Art Walk this Friday night from 6 to 9 at the Craddock Butterfield Gallery.
Okay, and what's the address there?
I don't know the number, but it's above the Thai restaurant on the lighthouse.
Yeah, there you go.
So you can have dinner and then come up
So
and
anyway,
see the artwork.
Friday night is the opening.
That's it.
So what's new with you, and what's new with the new work?
Well, the new work is coming along just real. I'm enjoying myself. I'm having a good time. It's always a challenge in life to figure out how to paint. So the longer you do it, the harder it gets. But lately, it's been sort of showing itself to be heading in the right direction, I think.
So Lucas is a color field artist. I would describe you as that.
Yeah.
And you've been working in a fairly tight frame for many years.
Yeah.
And you've had within that frame, you've been able to find infinity in a weird way.
As Mark Twain said, put all your eggs in one basket and watch that basket. And the form has not changed that much over the years because the subject isn't about the form. The subject is about experience and creating work that is about experience in a simple two-dimensional form, and that experience is color. And color is a personal, subjective, active process, and I'm trying to highlight that in the work I do in hopes that I find in the process some connection to my own analysis of life or feeling for my own life and being aware of my own life, and trying to make that happen as not an entertainment for viewers, but as a sharing, as a presentation, as an experience.
Yeah.
So the work is really about creating experience, and I've used these really rudimentary forms to do that. Forms that have been around for quite a while. Lots of people do rectangles and squares and everything else, from Albers to, it's just been going on for a long time. But I've tried to make them more active, more present, more undeniable.
And so just, we've talked about this many times, but there's the viewer, but you're not repeating, because again, from a cursory look, it seems, he's repeating, he's doing the same thing over. You're never doing the same thing over. It's always new, and it's always about you in the sense that no surprise for you, no surprise for the audience. So you don't repeat yourself, and you are trying to create a new experience, and you're trying to learn, and you're trying to do something. I mean, it is a very personal experience.
Yeah, for me, I see it. I see what I do, what I delight in, is looking for something in what I do. I mean, it's a search. It's a search and find. It's a contact with stuff that I don't know. I mean, it's a marvelous thing to spend your day trying to create something that's never existed before, and it's challenging in that way. And I tried to keep it moving forward by sometimes repeating formal kind of structural similarities.
Right. You loop.
Yeah, I loop on the structure.
Right.
What I don't try to loop on is what happens with that structure.
Right.
And that's the part I like. I mean, I like the part of not knowing where I'm going.
Yeah.
That's what makes it an adventure. That's what makes it interesting. It puts me in contact with all sorts of strange things in terms of my own process and how it relates. And hopefully that translates into pieces where people who view the pieces also sort of discover something about themselves.
I mean, you want to blow your own mind.
I want to blow my own mind first. I wouldn't be fun otherwise. But I definitely want that to be a shared experience.
And if you don't, another person might find it a perfectly good painting, but you're not going to put that out.
No. I'm not. The great luxury of having lived in the Monterey Peninsula is there's a lot of people who really compete or think about what I'm trying to do with the work. So it gives me a challenge just to work for myself. I mean, I'm really lucky that way.
Yeah.
I've really had a wonderful way an ideal way to actually do my own work. I've been forced into it.
Yeah.
Because what happens so often is you become part of a school or an idea, a group of thought a group thought, or you're responding to a manifesto or whatever, which certainly historically speaking, that's been sort of a way to write history books about art. But it's really a personal journey, and I'm fortunate I can do that.
And color, which is your métier, is an infinite.
To me, it is. I haven't found it. I haven't found any alternatives yet. I mean, there's
well, it's an infinite. There's always a new.
Yeah.
There's always a new reflection. Two colors. There's an infinite number of colors,
Right.
Combination possibilities, and then there's an infinite number of when you're putting 2, 3, 4, 5 colors together in different ways. It's going to create a different spark, a different bang.
You're painting,
I am painting.
and you run into this when you paint, because things change. You think, well, I'll add something here, and then you realize you just screwed up the other 2/3 of whatever you had, and you know, there's this. Well, it's Hans Hoffman talks about this give and take.
It's a very interesting thing because for me personally, I don't know if the work is getting better, but my critical eye of the work gets better, and you'll tolerate less. What you tolerate earlier, you'll tolerate less, and you'll be quicker to repaint.
Right.
And in your many years, you're much farther down that road where.
I have to keep tightening the band a little bit,
Right.
which is a little trickier. But you know, we live in a wonderful time. Anything goes.
Anything goes.
Anything goes.
It's the postmodern now.
Yeah, forever. I mean, I don't know where it'll ever go. There's no more history. There's no more history books about artists. There's a few that the marketing department has pulled out and said, hey, we can sell this
So
stuff.
any ism is a good ism. So now it's back to having something to say and saying it.
Yeah.
Which is, it is a good time.
I think in that way it is. I think there's also no one way to go.
Yeah.
You know, we have social responsibility in some work, and we have personal journeys about genderism and so forth in other work. We have conceptual work. It's a wonderful time to just let yourself do whatever you want to do, and there's an audience out there. There are people who prefer one thing over another.
But what is never out of fashion is the dedication, the work, in other words, if you're not putting in the time, the hours, the study, the passion, the spirituality, almost of this, not almost, but truly.
I think, I mean, just as an injection there, I think that's the only reason to do it is you know, as Richter said, you know, especially abstract painting. Abstract painting is a place for an atheist to go to have a spiritual experience.
It's a sacred act with a result.
Exactly.
You know, sacred act with something you can hang on the wall. I mean,
well, hopefully it's a sacred act for those who live with it on the wall.
Yes,
that they
absolutely.
can keep coming back to it, and it expands their experience. Hopefully, I think that was the great thing of the 20th century art movements. We finally said, art is not the object; it's the experience. It's what the viewer brings to it, and what vice versa that bounces off and then helps the viewer to see better.
But it does take two, and art requires the audience to do some work too. It's not meant to be. If it's easy, if it's easy, it's probably not going to. If it's too easy to get, it's probably living with it's probably going to wear off pretty quickly, like anything else. It takes, because you've put the complexity into the work.
Well, there's another aspect, which is nobody has spent as much time with that painting as the person who created it, or the piece of art, whatever it happens to be.
Yes.
No one has followed that path to get there.
Yes.
So the more complex the path is for you over years of work and vision and ideas, that generally starts to show up in the work.
Absolutely.
The challenge, of course, is it's a communication. I mean, why put it on the wall? One could live their lives doing whatever they want in their studio and never show it. But I think inherently there's a desire to communicate with the rest of the troupe.
Well, it's just such an interesting experience, because what you're trying to do is breathe life into an inanimate object. Is pretty. You want a piece that lives, and you know very quickly if something's got life or not life.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, painting used to be, there used to be a marvelous sense of craft and skill to be able to reproduce something that photographs didn't, because there weren't any. And a lot of the work was about how the illiterate could have an experience or an education through imagery, and there was a lot of hints and suggestions, and everybody could sort of read it by emotion, and there were better painters and worse painters. The 20th century kind of has put kind of a change there. You know, it's more about, you know, we're all existentialists. You know, there's a large group of us who realize that life isn't just about that book that you're supposed to read and follow the orders. It's really about exploration and discovering and answering yourself to, what the hell am I doing here? And what do I want to do with it? And I think art in general is showing that more and more within, and hence it has such a variety of work rather than just, can you render that person on the cross real well and make everybody feel bad and fix it? You know, that's a whole new way of art going, is it's heading for the invisible. It's heading for something that's never been. It's pure creativity in the sense that it's never existed before. There are no relative forms. When I have to make something, or you make a painting, or we're working, that has never existed before, ever. And that's a fascinating thing. It's not like recreating a portrait of someone, which still requires creativity and generating ideas of how to make that happen. But the discussion is not about discovering the unknown. And I think the 20th century has given us that in painting, sculpture, writing. It's all been about opening up what we don't know.
So you've had the great luxury. We live in a beautiful place.
Yeah.
We have a very supportive community, which your art community is important.
Yeah.
And you're now reaching an international audience. I know that you have a show in Munich right now, and
yeah.
Let's talk about what's going on with that overseas.
Well, living here in Monterey Peninsula is not the center of the art world, as it were. It's just been a great way to live, and as I mentioned earlier, it's a great way to work. But over the years, I've done it long enough, and the work is hanging in enough places, and I have exhibits in Los Angeles every couple of years and stuff like that, that people have started to see it who are not just from California. Stuff has been in D.C. and then now it's going to be shown it's being shown in Europe. I'm European. I mean, I'm born in the Netherlands, and
you a Dutch?
Yeah, there's kind of an interest on my side that sort of says, oh, it'd be interesting to see what. I mean, I've always thought that the work that I do is kind of connected to modernism and the style, which is a Dutch movement of minimalist nature, and yet I didn't choose to follow that. It seems to be a genetic thing of rectangles and color and all that stuff. And it's interesting that it developed here somewhat unconsciously because of things I saw as a child, probably. I don't know. It was not an intellectual decision. It just happened that way. And then for that work now to go back to the mindset of European, whatever you call aesthetics or so forth, and seeing what happens there was going to be an interesting blend. Because I think the work is
through the California blender, through the California light.
Because I think the paintings do have a California approach, which is the whole new age and personal exploration.
But just color.
Yeah.
You know, you wouldn't have your palette if you didn't live in your palette, I think.
That's true.
To a degree.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, and the whole attitude of it's not just architectural, it's actually emotional, which I think part of the self-discovery movement of California is you can connect to California. Eslen's down the street.
Yeah.
You know, that is part of what I grew up with, and part of what I aim to include in the work is that sense of the human experience and self-discovery. It's sort of, basically the Rothko, art is religious. It's about not necessarily a religion, but about a spiritual, personal journey.
And that experience.
Yeah, making that communicate through an object.
I mean, you do like I say, you put your soul into this thing.
Sometimes I think it puts me in there.
Yeah.
Because that's the push-pull stuff,
Yeah, and you can see if it's happening or not. I mean, that's the proof. With prayer is a lovely thing, but you can't tell the effectiveness of this. But with art, it's really there in front of you, and
it's almost a history of a prayer.
There you go.
What I mean? It's sort of, that's what the painting has that hook.
I mean, so what's interesting, just in a very real, so we don't sound too abstract. I mean, your work hangs in community hospital here,
Right, quite often. They've been very good.
And it's very powerful in that space, and it does have that. I mean, community hospital has a wonderful collection. First of all, I want to shout them out.
Amy Essick, the curator there, has
Yeah.
really done a marvelous job of bringing work that inspires healing. I think ultimately,
Yeah,
I think that's becoming
her
more
trip.
and more
Yeah.
part of the healthcare system. Is that actually the artwork actually helps people to pull away from the suffering they're going through and see a more optimistic approach to their healing, which in the long run speeds things up for healing. I think makes the process more about wellness rather than suffering. And I think that's happened through a lot of the health, very much so in the healthcare system in general in this country. And that money doesn't come from charging people for getting better. It usually comes out of, definitely comes out of donations of people who feel that that's something they want to contribute to the healthcare system. It's donated. It's not a profit center or anything like that.
Just before we run out, how do people find your website?
www.lucasblok.
It's the B-L-O-K. Okay,
Yeah,
I just wanted.
there's no C in there. Lucas Blok.
I just wanted to make sure that we get this, and I wanted to, also people can see your work here at the Monterey Museum of Art.
Right.
I think they have 3 or 4 or many pieces of your work.
It's December now. I think they've got a piece up in the entryway that's been there from the 80s, actually, an older piece. And CSUMB in their new library, that great building, I've got a 23-foot painting in there. It's great to be able to have. And that's another wonderful thing about these installations at like community hospital and so forth is I can do larger pieces for those things. And that's my personal joy.
The bigger the piece, the bigger the bang.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
It becomes more environmental rather than object based, which is yeah, that's enjoyable.
And I've lived with your work, so I can attest to the to the Lucas Blok brand, and it does work over time, and it does deepen, looking at something on the wall that seems kind of almost simple, and being simple is the hardest thing in the world is to look simple.
Yeah.
And the nutritional, art should be nutritious.
Well, yeah, I think that to me it does. I mean, that's again, it's. I don't know where all these various movements are going. I just think if I can just do what I do as well as I can conceive of doing it and doing it as honestly as I think I can do it, the history doesn't matter anyway. It's sort of, can I eat and sleep happily that I did what I thought I could do best.
You're invested, and you do it as well as you can, and you do it with rigor, and you do it with complete sincerity. And
I think most artists do try to live that way. That's the goal.
You can fake it, but you can't fake it for long.
It's basically like being a monk or a nun. I mean, you're in that world. That's your religion.
That's your religion.
Yeah.
My guest, Lucas Blok, great artist, and my friend, a pleasure.
Likewise. Likewise. Always is.
Always is. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll be back.